Hi, everybody. I'm Candid Frankie's David Morassutti, and this is CFL Talk, where we talk about the Canadian Football League. Sometimes we'll talk about the NFL. It depends on circumstances and the situation. Today, we're going to talk in the direction of power rankings, how the teams look last week, and then see what we think they look like this week because of what they did last week. But first, we'll talk about the game that we were at. I have to say, I guess my first comment is, wow. It was a game to be. I mean, if you can't sell tickets after a game like that, and I know people are going to say, yeah, well, it was pretty messy, right? But in its messiness, there was an excitement, and there really was um, something to draw you in because there was always the threat of one of the teams was going to go into the tank severely, and neither did. It was a very interesting game, a very balanced game, and the score was very indicative of the way both teams played. Amazingly, it was a 3 point difference, yet there were tons of mistakes, David.
Oh yeah, like that. I think that game coaches were just trying to manage, as Mike Miller said, manage in the moment, coaching in the moment, because nobody. I don't think either team. Yeah, the Argos got the win. That's important for them. Getting the win is important, but you could tell execution was not front of mind in terms of just if you were to ask me what my rating on execution was on that game, it wouldn't be very high because there's a lot of mistakes, and mistakes
Absolutely.
can lead to chaos, and we saw a lot of chaos in this game.
It was chaotic, that's for sure. It also was full of dynamic plays. It wasn't just a question of the scores happened because of mistakes. They were dynamic plays that caused the scores. Of course, we had some great special team plays. We had some awesome defensive plays, and we had some great defensive plays. So every part of a game that could rose up in that game. Complete with from great strategy, execution, scoring to poor strategy, execution, and scoring by the other team defensively. It really had everything, and that's why I say, how can you not sell tickets? There was something there that any football fan likes in that game.
Yeah, game had literally everything.
Everything, everything.
There was you wanted to see a kick return for a touchdown or a return for a touchdown. You saw that. You want to see a running back break free for a touchdown? You had that. You want to see, um, what deep shots? You saw that. You want to see
Big runs.
fumbles? You saw that. You wanted to see interceptions? You saw lots of that as well.
A lot of that. You saw a lot of that. Um, the thing that I liked as well, and which was a good sellable point, is that we saw two starting quarterbacks playing against each other. Past few weeks, that's been a bit of a challenge for the Canadian Football League. So we got to see the top quarterbacks up against each other. Against some really good defense, and both those teams have really good defense. The Argos this year at the top of the league as far as defense is concerned, and they really, I think, built on that reputation last night.
Yeah, I mean the defense is really the last 2 weeks has the Argos looking like a different team. Um, because the first few weeks the defense seemed in a lot of ways looked like a big issue that they were going to have to figure out, and they were going to need they're going to need to figure that out because if your defense is not able to keep you in games, make plays for you, you're not going to go far in this league, right? Especially when you look at the teams at the top, they're not having the defensive blunders that the Argos were having. They weren't, giving up leads. They weren't giving up back-breaking touchdowns and things like that. The details are a lot more there. And the last few weeks we have seen, even with injuries, I don't know. I don't know if sometimes it takes time for new concepts and schemes to sink in. It takes time for new players to kind of get comfortable. But this game for Toronto was kind of, I felt like, coming in a lot of ways, because like you look at the players on defense they brought in, I didn't see that unit being silent for much longer. They had a lot of faith in what they did and the guys they brought in, the coaches that they brought back in a lot of ways. And that's what you were kind of waiting for that to finally come out and be, and make it happen, right? And it didn't. And you got to give them credit that they didn't panic, right? Make a move maybe for the sake of making a move and things like that. So I give them credit in that regard, but you're also like, I always lament on what if it was like this at the start of the year? How much different would the Argos season look already, right? Because Montreal, a lot of people says the East goes through Montreal. Very true, because Montreal has been doing this right from the start of the year. I win this game and this performance, albeit the turn, like defensively, I will say, I wouldn't count out the Argos just yet when it comes to being a team that can contend in the East based on how that defense played.
I'll add this to your point about the defense and the defense being um, running on all cylinders. One of the biggest problems they had is they had a lack of pass rush. They've been really good against the run all season. They've been
Yep.
doing that. They've been doing that really well. But the pass rush was something that left a lot to be desired. Now, injuries impacted on that ability that the Argos
True.
lacked. The bringing in of the Lemonator, Lemon came in and he really added to the mix. And he basically helped ignite this defensive line into pressuring the quarterback. And Vernon Adams is a quarterback that if you don't pressure him, don't give him time to think about what he's going to do. Don't give him time to find players open or an ability that he has on making the big plays. Big plays are
Yes.
harder to make with less time. And that's I think an improvement to your point. And you're talking about the Argos starting to hit their stride defensively. That's a key component. Making the quarterback less effective is very important, which goes to my point that I said at the beginning is this was a great game because the two starting quarterbacks actually played. And this showed the challenge that both defenses had and how they were able to rise up. Now, as much as Kelly threw his interceptions, a lot of it had to do with some great defensive play where basically we talk about Franklin doing things that maybe you could cause yourself a little bit of grief when you go after the ball and miss it ends up received and then the player has a complete run to the end zone. We saw that last night. Now, is that because of Kelly or is that because the Argo receiver didn't come back at the ball? We saw that a few times last night, and the receiving core I think is responsible to protect the quarterback as well. And what we talk about and what's talked about by coaches is ball security. And last night, ball security didn't really happen on either side of the equation.
Yeah, I'm trying to look right now. Um, Let me see. Is that this season? Are they at 13 sacks? I'm trying to find out where the Argos were going into this game, because you were talking about the sacks, and I do agree that the Argos um, were guilty of, not completing, not getting the sacks or not completing them when the
The
chances were
pressure,
there.
putting the pressure on the quarterback.
Yeah, exactly. So the Argos were. I don't know if this includes. Yeah, so I don't know if this includes. Like they're actually. I probably since Lemon came in, like they're now like tied for second in the league. They're in in the same realm as Winnipeg,
Calgary.
Saskatchewan. Like that's where they sit. They're actually doing better than Montreal But I think that also includes last night's game. So I think they were tied with Montreal. But both teams now have 8 games. Where I also see things too is you went up against a Calgary front line that doesn't give up a lot of sacks either, right? Now I do think that if you are Toronto, like that's the area where you want to see you preach. You have probably one of the better defensive line coach, right? In Maxi coming back, and they preach on that being a big addition, right? Bringing him back and what he means having that coach back. I would like to see now. You're going to be going up against some of the better teams coming up. You've got one against Edmonton next week. Can what the defensive line do against Calgary continue against Edmonton, who, I mean, that's a team that's got everything going for them, right? So for the Argos, they just have to find ways to build off wins. They struggled to do it, right? This season, they hadn't been able to string a couple wins together. Now they have, right? 2 wins in a row. Um, they're back at home. Things are starting to look a little more comfortable for them. They're starting to feel a lot better about themselves. Now it's a matter of whether this is something that can be sustainable, right? Can they sustain this type of run?
Sustainability is clearly a challenge for every team in the Canadian Football League. And
Mm-hmm.
when we talk about power rankings and or how we feel teams, match up against the other teams, less about per game, but really what we're talking about here in the conversation is talking about the process, where the teams are in the process of becoming a Grey Cup champion, because ultimately that's the goal, right? You want to be a Grey Cup champ, and what gets you there, and that's what gets you there is that the execution, a plan, and able to execute it. We watched last night in that game. Kelly throw a few interceptions, and I want to mention this. After the interview with him, I continued talking with him, and he was very actually engaging. And he said, "What'd you think of my game?" I said, basically, I said, "Well, it was terrible." And I'm going to say this: I'm not going to apologize for saying that because it's true. He had a terrible part of his game. What I neglected to do was to tell the other part of the equation, which was while he had bad moments, he also had really good moments. And at the end of the day, what a player needs to do is to check out the problems and continue pursuing. And that's where our conversation went, where he felt that, well, you can't give up. You got to keep. And I asked him about, being aggressive, right? And this wasn't on camera. This was just talking to him. I said, you need to be aggressive. And that's how I was trying to say that, yeah, you had a bad game, but you didn't give up and you kept going for it. And I think that's very true with sports in general, and of course a quarterback specifically, where a quarterback is always going to look like he made a mistake. It's like goaltenders in hockey, right? They're the last line of defense. In the case of football, they're the first line of offense, and mistakes can be, again, I referenced the point a little bit earlier where I said receivers can help a quarterback not make mistakes, right? So when
Mm-hmm.
you allow a defender to jump in front of you to catch the ball, as much as that's a statistic against the quarterback, the assist on that negative play is the receiver who does not protect the ball. So I was a little harsh with my answer, but unfortunately, he asked me a question. I didn't think of anything other than telling him what I really felt. But I didn't complete my answer well enough to suggest that he also played really well. And that's, football, that's sports in general. It's a question. The really great players do not let their mistakes stop them from playing really well. And that's why his team loves him so much.
I think here's the thing. Chad Kelly said it. You asked him the question of being aggressive and whether that that style should have changed in any way because of the way the game was going. And he's like, well, I don't want to be known as check down. What did you say? Check
Yeah,
down Chad Kelly?
Check down Charlie.
Check down
I
Charlie?
think it
Like
was check down Charlie, I think.
he doesn't want to change the way he plays because that gives into what the other team wants him to do. Right? He's throwing the interceptions. They're like, okay, maybe now Chad will stop throwing the deep ball because we hate the fact that this guy loves to throw it deep. Right?
Absolutely.
Because especially with the receivers, he's like DeMonte Coxey. Like that guy had I don't there were so many things that were talked about last night. I don't know if his game was talked about enough. I felt bad in my story. I didn't really highlight the fact that Coxey finished the game with 161 yards.
And a big reception to win the game, to keep the
Yeah,
drive alive.
yeah. And Kelly, give him credit. He kept going. He kept going to DeMonte Coxey. He kept pushing the ball there, right? And so when the opportunity's there, he didn't hesitate. He didn't hesitate because that's not. They want Chad Kelly to be that quarterback that's going to force the issue. That's what they want from him. They don't want the safe guy because they have, in my opinion, they have the safe guy. That's Nick Arbuckle. If they
Absolutely.
really wanted to play it safe, they would have put him in the game, but they didn't want to. They knew that they were going to need someone that was going to push the boundary a bit. Now, Calgary is a team that you're gonna take those shots. You're gonna see it the other way where they're gonna take it from you, right? But you have to be confident in your game plan to be able to keep doing it and hopefully score more points than the other team, which is what happened. Now, is that a recipe for success? I don't know. I don't know if you can really sustain having 4 interceptions and win a football game. We've seen it, you know. The interesting is, Frank, and I meant to bring this up with you last night. We saw this script before.
Absolutely.
2023 East Final. Chad Kelly could not throw a pass, could not help himself to not throw it to the other team. But it felt like two things. One, he was able to handle it better in the moment. And two, the team stepped up around him. He
Absolutely.
had a different avenue to go to. He had a running back who, yes, made a mistake earlier in the game, but was able to overcome that. And, he made the big play of the game. Like the biggest play of the game was that running touchdown because it did two things. It took the pressure off of Kelly to have to again try to win the game himself.
Absolutely.
And two, now teams are going to have to respect that element of the game more.
Which the Argos haven't had for, I'll say, a while.
Since Kadeem Carey was there, right?
Who
They haven't
happens
had that running back that you have to give a lot more respect for.
who happens to be their running backs coach
Yes,
right now.
exactly. And Griff, our friend Griff, said Kadeem was in the elevator. It was pretty fired up. I'd be pretty fired up too if my player that I'm coaching breaks off for a 40-yard touchdown, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think I've noticed, and I'll bring you the fans into this personal experience, where personality. Now I'll talk a little bit about personality. Chad Kelly, a few years ago, had a reputation of being standoffish and almost, I'm going to say it. He almost seemed full of himself. Right? That's the personality he had a while ago. He has since gotten married. He has 2 kids. And the person that now we interview, David, the guy we're interviewing now, is far more tolerant to tough questions. A. B. He has a default mode. And the default mode is he takes responsibility for his contribution and ensures people understand that he knows he has to be better. It's not like he's sitting there pretending he had a great game and, has nothing to improve. He has constantly this season, every time he's played, he's been his biggest critic. That's what I see. And that's a kind of maturity that he's developed that I think the Argos are grabbing with both hands,
Mm-hmm.
not only management, not only the coach, but I think his teammates as well. And that's why they support him so heavily. And that's why they care about how he does so much. And I'm telling you an inside bit of information, if you were in the locker room with us, you would get that message as well. And if you watch some of the post game interviews, you'll get that sense as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. He is his toughest critic. He also knows that he's not going to let he's he's his toughest critic, but he's also very confident in his abilities.
Absolutely.
Right? Like that there's two parts to it. Some people call him cocky. Sure. Yeah. I mean, a lot of good players tend to be have that aura about them where they feel like they're, in a different class. And Chad Kelly, look, I'll tell you this. Yes, the turnovers were a problem, but there aren't many quarterbacks in the CFL that are making the throws he's making.
Right.
Pushing the ball as deep as he's been pushing it. Like, let's be honest here, right? Vernon Adams couldn't really do it he couldn't match Chad Kelly this time around. The last time he did, but that's because
Overmatched him.
he overmatched him, and the Argos just didn't have they just struggled to contain, right?
Yeah.
So I do think that there is like Chad Kelly has shown that he is maturing. Now, he still leads the league in interceptions. It's not all perfect, but he's also winning them football games.
My last comment about Chad Kelly is going to be he admitted after the cameras were turned off when I was talking to him, he admitted kind of that he's working through some rust as well. We're talking about 18 months of not playing, right?
Yeah.
And so there's some natural rust there. I don't think it's a big surprise that he's got to work his way back into shape, not only physically, which is what you have to do in gaining your confidence that you can play on that injured limb. Then you also have the mental aspect of the game. The in-game experience is long disappeared in his game, right? So he's got to acquire that back and fine tune that. I think that's the reason why the interceptions are happening, is that his body and his mind aren't playing together, and the more he plays, the more that'll happen. So he's aware that he needs to be fixing his game, and I think that's why he gravitates to that. I got to be better because he knows he can be better.
Yeah. No, he knows he can be better. The team knows he can be better. His coach knows he can be better. But it's funny because we talk about him needing to be better, and yet the Argos are winning.
Exactly.
Imagine if he is playing mistake-free football.
Oh boy.
Where this Argos team would be right now. I would say, how many games has the thing is, I will say this: how many games has Chad Kelly lost this team? Maybe the Montreal game where he had the interception, like a late pick that went against them. Hamilton, there were some questionable decisions that went against them too. Other than that, like I would
Actually,
say
I
that,
think all three phases have lost games for the
yes,
Argos.
absolutely,
All three phases have been
totally agree with
guilty of
that.
losing games.
So, I do think that there is at least an area where I can see them improving. I can see them getting better. Like, they haven't reached their peak. And I think that says a lot about where this team is right now and how much better things can be. Yes. But I think they're definitely on the right track.
Well, last night could have been a disaster.
Absolutely. I thought with the way Calgary was getting those turnovers, they scored the first touchdown, and I'm like, oh, here we go. We're kind of seeing a similar story play out. And you know what? If I'm a Calgary Stampeders fan, that game would have pissed me off so much. I had one reach out to me and say if my Calgary Stampeders weren't inept, that was the word used, was inept, this would have been a different story. But unfortunately, in order for your team to win a football game like that, they need to be able to take advantage of these opportunities. So there is a little bit of that involved as well. While the Argos were fortunate to get away with the mistakes they made, it also had to do with the fact that Calgary did not capitalize. And if you're going to be a team that wants to contend and be a championship caliber team, you have to learn how to capitalize on the mistakes. And Toronto, I'll look no further than the 2024 Grey Cup. That's what they did. They capitalized on mistakes from Collaros, the injury he had. They took advantage. And if I'm Calgary, your defense got those turnovers, but they also gave up plays, a lot of plays. Like there was it. I'll say this: Toronto talked about playing complementary football. I think that was a very uncomplimentary like game from Calgary when you look at the three phases and how they all played into their loss.
Yeah, and then we've talked here on this program over the years, Vernon Adams and his ability to make big plays. There's another part of Vernon Adams that's of concern to anybody who's coaching him that puts what he's doing today based on what he's done in the past. And it's my hope, and I'm sure it's the hope of the fans and the coaches in Calgary. The one big repeat thing that happens with Vernon Adams is when he hits a rut, he has difficulty pulling out of it. He didn't have a very good game in Hamilton. Now he didn't have a very good game here in Toronto. His next game, he's got to figure out how to right this ship. He has historically had problems of getting into a rut and not able to pick up his game and undo whatever damages, which is ironic because this conversation now goes to, we were talking about what we think makes Kelly a really good quarterback. I think Vernon Adams needs a bit of that as well. And that's what he's lacking, the ability to have confidence after not playing well or not having a good play. He's a little more emotional, and his confidence sometimes, I think, historically at least anyway, appears to be lost, and it's hard for him to pick it up again. And I'm sure the coaching staff, the head coach Dickinson, and his teammates are trying to help him to understand that he is a great quarterback. He can be that great quarterback. He just has to believe it and pursue it and just execute.
Well, that's it, right? Having that belief. It would help if his special teams didn't give up the punt like they did. It would help. It has to. He has to understand that he can only control what he can control. Um, you know, it's like to me after that interception he threw in the end zone, he was a different quarterback. He was not the same quarterback, and I felt like that interception. It was like, oh, now I've thrown a pick. I'm back to being that player that maybe tries a little too hard.
It tries being too fine as well.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Right. It's not gonna. Everything's not gonna go smooth sailing for you,
Yeah, a
and
little bit of that
so
thick skin, maybe that Kelly has. He needs to build up a little bit.
yeah,
And again, look, I'm not a psychological expert. I'm not the best football expert in town. But
not Doctor Candid.
not Dr. Candid. But my observation is that he gets into a rut and has difficulty getting out of the rut. Historically, that happened in Montreal, that happened in BC, and now he's in a bit of a rut with Calgary. The back-to-back games, Hamilton and Toronto, two teams, one for sure, Hamilton, that is questionable that they should even offer any kind of uh, really good defense because of the lack of quarterbacking play, right? That they have with Bo Levi out. So this is a concern for Calgary and their fans, because this is a team that for the past couple of years has been on the verge of being a great team.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that they were well on their way to being, a team to be feared in that West Division again. Now, I still think that they are a playoff team. I still think that they have the tools to be a team that can compete. I just don't know if it's a team that's ready to contend. And there's to me there's a difference in that regard. There's a difference between being able to compete and a difference between being able to contend. And I don't know if Calgary has found that formula that works just yet. I don't know if they've. Again, I don't think they've played their best game. Yeah,
Yes.
they had that one game where they scored what, 50 something points on
Yeah.
Toronto,
6 touchdowns.
right? Seven actually, I think seven touchdowns.
One
But
was
like,
a pick six, wasn't? Oh, it doesn't matter anyway. Go ahead.
but that is a game where you're looking at this and saying, this is who we are. This is what we want to play. But
Mm.
they have not been able to sustain that. They haven't been able to do that on a week to week basis. And if you want to be a team that's going to be taken seriously as a contender, you can't. You that has to be there has to be a level of consistency in that identity that you're able to do this on a week to week basis, not one time where a team makes so many mistakes. Like those two wins against Toronto and Winnipeg, they capitalize on the opportunities they had. They haven't been able to do it the last couple weeks, and to
Yeah.
me, it just speaks you're more of a reactive type of team, reacting to situations than you are a team that puts their stamp on the game, right? And that's not an easy because teams will eventually figure out if we don't go too overzealous, right? Maybe we'll be able to win more often. I think Calgary right now they're just lacking a little bit of that identity.
Let's move on to the rest of the teams, and I'll start by
Sure.
saying this. Here's uh, David's power rankings coming into this week. Als, Elks, Rough Riders, Stampeders, Argonauts, Blue Bombers, Tiger Cats, Lions, and Red Blacks. And I made a joke too bad there's not a 10th place because Red Blacks could go in there. Man, are they having a tough time. So we have here the Stampeders and Argonauts at 4 and 5. What we do know after this week, the Stampeders and Argonauts are going to basically
Swap.
switch positions, right? And now the question is, with how the rest of the games go, how far will the Argos move up? How far down will the Stampeders go? What will happen with the rest of the teams? So we're looking at the Owls, and they're number one because they are basically, in my opinion, the most efficient team in the league, and consistent as well. I know for those
Everything's working.
fans of the West that may be counterintuitive, but that's where I'm at.
Like the Elks are not far behind. It's almost a 1A 1B situation in a lot of ways. I just think that if you're going to tell me right now which roster would I take, especially quarterback, I'm probably leaning more towards Davis Alexander than I am Cody Fajardo. As great as Cody Fajardo's played this year, I just think Davis Alexander has you just know he's going to bring it every single game. You know what you're going to get from him. I think Montreal just has kind of a more complete. I think they're more sound in coaching, complete all around. And Montreal's been doing it a lot longer, right?
Yes,
They have made games look very easy for themselves. Edmonton has in some cases too, but I think that loss against Saskatchewan doesn't have me ready to put them ahead of Montreal just yet. Maybe if they play the next time the two play against each other, which I think they have a game coming up. I think soon. Actually, sorry, dummy. They play tomorrow.
yes.
So that game, if the Elks were to, that's a game where the Elks can really make a statement and say we should be number one.
Right. A win by the Elks, and you know the way the league wants games to be concluded with a winner and a loser. There's going to be a winner and a loser, and the Elks 1-2 designation that we put out here today will definitely change or remain the same depending on who wins. Um, and the question then becomes when Saskatchewan plays Ottawa, a victory against Ottawa is not going to move them up, but a loss to Ottawa could move them down. And I have to say the Rough Riders are a team that are dealing with an emotional situation, and I think they're going to get over it right now, and they're in the process of getting over it. Real tough situation for them in the locker room, losing a captain in the way that they lost him. Terrible situation, but this Rough Rider team, what they have more than anything, they're not the same organization they were a couple of years ago. This is a level headed organization with great leadership in their coach. The general manager's always been able to bring players, but they have a coach now that knows how to create an executable plan, and their emotions are controlled because of Corey Mace and his way of coaching.
Well, that's it, right? That's where you have to be again confident in how your coaching staff can get you back on track when things aren't going your way. And I think that's what, Saskatchewan lost a pretty tough one, you know, almost identical scores, right? 2 point loss against Edmonton, and then you go for the return, and it's, you know, they go out and they find a way to get that back,
That's
right? Their defense steps up, plays a lot better. The running game again plays a part of it, which you know, with Ouellette dealing with injuries, it hasn't been easy for them. But what Saskatchewan does, they got back to the defensive identity a bit
absolutely.
more, and that's where Edmonton struggled. The off Edmonton, my thing too about them, their running game has not been as potent the last few weeks. Justin
Rankin, you
Rankin has
expect
been.
more from him, right? Like
Yeah, he was. He's been kind of their
go-to
breakout
guy.
star,
He's the
right?
go-to guy. Yeah, he was well early in the season. He was unstoppable.
Four out of the first, I think, 5 games, he went over 100 yards. He had that one game for 179 yards against Montreal. The last 3 games for him, 9 yards, 39 yards, 28 yards on the ground. That's not going to get it done, right? You know, he did have a couple of big receptions in this game. The one for 51 yards, but Edmonton needs the run game back. They need the run game to be a factor. It hasn't been, and that's not the way they want to play. They want to have the run game be a part of what they're doing.
And in sports, it's generally understood that in sports everything's copycat. And in the case of Rankin, if a team figures out how to slow him down and make him ineffective, copycat time. This is what happens. Scouting and coaching tries to figure out how to negate somebody's ability to beat you, and a lot of times they get assistance from other teams showing them how. And that is, I think, what is the separator between the great teams, the good teams, and the bad teams. And that is how reflexive coaches and coaching staffs and organizations are in understanding. For example, we talked about Vernon Adams. Rankin's the same thing. He's in a little bit of a rut. It's not totally his fault, I don't think, but it is a situation created by the opposition who figure out how to slow him down. The job of Rankin and his team is to figure out how to break him loose again, and that's the yin and yang of sports, right? That's what happens all the time. So we have two quarterbacks in those two teams, in the Elks and the Rough Riders. We have Cody Fajardo in Edmonton, who is a big play quarterback, and he's done that this year. He's proven once again that he's a top-notch quarterback in the Canadian Football League. And Trevor Harris, who, going back to, and I'm guilty of this, and I remember talking about this in as far as Trevor Harris being a quarterback that had trouble early in his career getting into the end zone. Now, that was less about him, history has taught us, than it was the guys that he had to go into the end zone. And we heard last year, remember, we were having the conversation, oh, he doesn't have that much trouble getting into the end zone. I guess they're right. He ended up winning a Grey Cup. He's a professional. Trevor Harris is the ultimate professional. He's the guy that gets the most out of his body and out of his brain. And that's what makes him so good. He's very workmanlike and he's steady. And that's part of the reason why the Rough Riders won the Grey Cup. And that's what makes them really good. And that's what has to be negated. They need to take time away from him, but he's so efficient at tossing the ball in so little time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, like Cody Fajardo. Um, I've always been a big admirer of his, I guess his gutsiness,
Yeah.
right? That was a quarterback that got hit a lot. How many? He got hit, pummeled throughout his career, and to see him still put Edmonton on his back at times, it's impressive. And he's got the receivers to do it as well. Austin Mack, Keon Julian Grant, TJ Luther. Like he's got weapons to work with. I I'm sure he's had weapons. Him and Austin Mack were teammates back in Montreal. Like he's had weapons. It just feels like this is the most. Um, he's had the ability to really show his skill set off this year more than I've seen in the last few years.
Well, two things meeting each other: a team ready to win, and a quarterback that can. Those two came together. It didn't work for Ford. Um, uh, it just is what it is. All right, let's move on to the Bombers, Ticats, and Lions. The Bombers aren't playing this week, so what happens everywhere else will affect where they sit. Right now, we have them at sixth. The Tiger Cats and Lions, two teams that will be playing each other and trying to create some sort of rhythm in their game that will carry them forward. Both of them have been kind of caught in the mud at times. They've been stuck. Now, both have had their starting quarterbacks on the sidelines. That doesn't help at all. But somehow teams have to play well enough to stay in the hunt for a playoff spot. This game, just as the Argos Stampeder game, is the same situation. We're talking about a team in the East that needs to beat a team in the West because that team they're playing could take their playoff spot in the East away from them.
Yep, and unfortunately for Hamilton, BC's going to get a boost with Nathan Rourke expected to come back. And like BC is that team where they probably feel like they should be in a better position. But look, you go out, you win a few games here, you get yourself to 500. It changes everything. You know, just looking at how the Lions have been hit hard with the injury. They also had to deal with the fact that they weren't playing in front of their home crowd, although they did do the games in different parts of BC. It just again, that's also just consistency. They need to find the consistency, especially on offense. Nathan Rourke coming back, pressure's on him now. He's got to. They have to. He has to find a way to get back to being that player that's going to take his team over the top, rather than being the player that's struggling to, provide the spark. He needs to provide the spark again.
Yeah, it's a tough situation. Um, so the Tiger Cats, without their quarterback, have to figure out, as we talked, for the same reason that we talked at the beginning of the year with the Argos being on the road. You're going through a tough stretch. You're coming up against a big challenge, not being expected to dominate other teams. But the key is not to be left behind. That's what Hamilton's situation is. They've got to try and figure out how to stay in the pack, keep their opportunity to make the playoffs alive, and play the kind of way that they can. Um, I, I guess Ford has been a quarterback that has shown flashes of greatness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I like the way he plays. I like his legs. His arm, though, is the thing that his arm and good decision making. Those two things, he's got a really good head coach. Milanovic is the quarterback whisperer. If anybody can help Ford become a better quarterback, it's going to be Milanovic. Now, he's had a couple of weeks where Ford has been his focus, David. Do you think, how important do you think it is to see Ford sort of shine a light a little bit into being a really good quarterback sooner rather than later?
He needs
under
to have
Milanovic.
trust and faith in himself. Like, you've got Kenny Lawler on your team, one of the best receivers in the league. You throw a ball up to him, he should be able to get it. We've seen it time and time again. That's what made him and Bo Levi Mitchell work so well together. Like, he's got, again, he has weapons. Milanovic has to find a way for him to get comfortable being in the pocket. Calgary, what they did in that game is they said, you're going to have to throw the ball to beat us, right? Now, I do think that when Trey is struggling to get those completions, or if the coverage is tough, sorry, go and use your legs. Use your legs. It's not a problem. We know that you like to run the ball. We know that you like to run with it. Go and do that. But you have to, if you're going to be a successful quarterback in this league, you have to show that you trust your ability to throw the ball. I don't think he has. He's shown glimpses of it, but he's got to be able to show that he can stand in the pocket, throw it 30 times, and at least complete more than 50% of his passes. And that's been the struggle. He's not very accurate. Maybe he needs to work on his arm a little bit more. I don't know. But Kenny Lawler should not go 3 of 9 for 45 yards. He can't. He's not. He is much better than that as a receiver.
Well, you talk about a catch radius, and he has one of the best.
Yeah.
Which means a quarterback doesn't have to work as hard to get it to him, to give him a chance to, there's nobody better one-on-one. Those 50% throws. The problem is Ford is throwing 30% throws. They need to be more 50%. But I have faith in Milanovic and him being a good steward of a quarterback's ability. I think he can. I think he can improve Ford. It's hard to overcome if you're a player, right? That you're going into a season and you're going, okay, I'm with this new team. I've got this coach that I believe can really help me become a better quarterback. And then all of a sudden, suddenly, you're in the forefront. So going into the season, he was probably in a position where he knew he had to be patient and he had time to work on his game. And then all of a sudden, the number one quarterback, Bo Levi Mitchell's gone, and now all the pressure's on him, and he wasn't ready to take over the reins, I don't think. And this is one of the challenges that Ford has to basically rise up to the challenge, which is, hey, dude, you just got here, but man, you got to play like you've been here for a while. And he hasn't done that yet. And we'll see if he can.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, for sure.
The Lions are a team, and these teams that we have ranked 6 down to 9: Blue Bombers, Tiger Cats, Lions, and Red Blacks. You used a term today, and you suggested that what's important for teams is complementary football.
Yeah.
I think the definition of those 4 teams is they lack the complementary football. They need help when they lose a quarterback from other phases of the game, which they get and they don't get, and that ends up with resulting either a victory or a loss, right? And the Red Blacks are a team that not only are they not complementary, they don't have they don't have I don't know, they don't have an identity within the team. You can't even say, well, they've got a great offense. It's too bad about the defense and the special teams, right? They just don't have, there isn't a phase of their game right now that can carry the team.
No, I agree. The offensive line hasn't been good. They can't run the ball. The defense, they've just fired the defensive coordinator. Giveaways, they're losing the giveaway battle. Their penalties, they haven't been too bad with penalties. 1 for 5 in the red zone. like there's too many areas of the game, and it's not, as I said, it's not just the offense, right? They don't have the big playmaker on special teams to help give them those opportunities. They don't have, the defense isn't providing takeaways. They're not providing sacks. Like, there's too many areas of this Red Blacks team right now that are not performing up to snuff. It's simple as that. Like Aaron Casey, who they got from who the Argos let go and they brought in, has been one of their, I guess, maybe better players, and he was kind of a side note in a lot of ways. They just got rid of Gino Lewis. They said it hasn't been good enough. We're gonna make a bit of a, that might have been a bit of a message sending move. We have no problem cutting a guy like Gino Lewis, who's been
Nobody safe.
right, but they need to start forging an identity in that with that team. Ryan Dinwiddie, I think, understands better than anyone that if you don't have, I guess, if you don't have it working on all levels, on all three levels, you're not winning. You're not getting. They're just not getting any plays from the other two, like, from defense, from special teams. Even if your offense starts playing better, okay, but that doesn't change the fact that you're not getting enough from the other two phases to even help bring that better.
I think when you talk about complementary football, one of the definitive things that points to complementary football are two words: field position. Every phase of the game contributes to field position. Field position is all about putting yourself in the position where you force the other team to be on their back leg, right? So if Ottawa can't get the other team on their back leg, and that means put themselves on their toes, going downhill. They just haven't been able to get to the point where they're going downhill in a game, and that's what they need to do. Whether it's a contribution or a compilation of contribution from all three phases, there has to be an opportunity there where they put themselves in field position and make the other team prone to allowing points, or put the other team in a position where offensively they're in a position where the Ottawa defense can take advantage of their desperation to get moving. And that's why I think field position is, if I were to define Ottawa's problem, it's that they don't put themselves in really good field position. And there are so many opportunities to do it. We see it every year. We see every team, every good team. What they do is the defense helps pin the other offense against the goal posts. The offense brings the ball. Maybe they don't get a touchdown. They might get a field goal, but at the very least, they bring the ball downfield and make it a challenge for the other offense. And special teams flip the script because of their great run backs. So there are lots of opportunities to flip the script. There's lots of opportunities to gain field position. And Ottawa's just got to figure out how they can be complementary and do that on a more consistent basis. And that's what they need. The desperation and the frustration that team and their head coach feels is so obvious when you watch them play.
Yeah, and I don't know what shoe's gonna drop first in Ottawa, because I don't see, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't see this being a quick fix. I think they can win a game. I definitely think they can win a game. I just don't know how many games I can expect them to win. It's that grim, in my
I
opinion,
hope
for
it
this
doesn't
team.
get like it did in Edmonton. For how many games was it? Oh my gosh.
Oh,
Hopefully Ottawa can get out from the offer. You know, that's the challenge they have, just to win a game, concentrate on what it takes to win, and to have, and it's hard when you have the record they have, to have the confidence that you can win. So you literally have to create that confidence from almost nothing, and that's the challenge. That's a real challenge, and looking in that locker room, and being able to pull that rope all together in the same direction. And as I said, field position. Everything they do has to be to improve field position, because without that, their confidence doesn't rise and the opportunities don't appear.
yeah, no, exactly. I do think that there's Otto's got to be pretty worried, because that's a team that's struggled for so long, and that fan base is not going to accept it. Right? They've waited so long for this team to be competitive. They were competitive with Drew Brown, right? Now, with how things are going with Drew Brown in Winnipeg. Maybe maybe it was a little maybe Ottawa is being unfairly pushed as the team that got rid of the one quarterback that they had. Um, like to me, if you're Ottawa right now, you definitely need to find some semblance of hope somewhere. Bring in somebody eventually that's going to give you the ability to say, we finally found the guy at quarterback. We finally found a defensive identity. They don't have it. And it's Ryan Dinwiddie is faced with almost I wouldn't say an impossible task, but it's a very tough task.
Well, you know, if all you've got is holes to fill, what do you build from? Right? They've got to figure out. They've got to figure out whether it's a phase, whether it's a part of the game that they can improve and create a positive vibe in the locker room that they can build on. With every team we've watched all season, we've seen teams that don't have everything working at once, but if they have something working at once, then they get an opportunity to build on that. We've seen it, like we went to the game to watch the Argos. We talk about the fact that, a lot of interceptions, but the other stuff can contribute to turning the tide. And Ottawa's got to figure out a part of their game that they can build on. And, it could be a kick return for a touchdown. It could be anything. It could be a good run. It could be a drive. That's what they need, and they just have not been able to get that consistently. They've had a game where they had a big lead, and they couldn't hold it. So we know they can get a lead. The question then became, can they hold it? So that's the question now. So they've got to get to that position again and show that they can hold a lead. Anything positive for this team will help in the long run, not only in the seats but in the locker room as well.
Definitely agree.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So I wanted to talk about this last point. We got a couple of minutes left that I'd like to use on how do you feel about the kick return game in the Canadian Football League with the rule changes? I'll start by saying this. I know people are upset about the opportunities for kick returns being lessened. I'm going to try and flip the script here and look at a positive aspect of it. There were tons of opportunities until they started erasing opportunities for kick returns. I'm of the mind that it may be a blessing in disguise because it becomes the kick return now less opportunity, it becomes more important. And the proficiency of a kick returner and special teams now is being challenged. I compare this new rule to the same thing that we talked about when pass interference changed, where we all said to ourselves, well, this is going to make it, this is going to make it hard for defenders to defend because there's less they can do.
Yeah.
Well, guess what happened? The defenders rose up to it. I can honestly say that I'm impressed with the way the players' talent in DBs has been elevated because of it. I think the same thing is going to be true for kick returns. There's going to be less opportunity, but you're going to find players that can make a lot with that little opportunity.
The way I see it is this: wide field makes kick returns a lot better in the CFL. The 5-yard halo makes it better. I love seeing the kick field goals returned for a touchdown. Don't get me wrong. But if that's a reason you say you come to watch the CFL is for that specific play, I think you're watching the wrong sport, personally. Because here's the thing with my issue with the field goal return for a touchdown. The team that missed the field goal is at such a disadvantage. Let's not forget. Because they're all standing waiting for a kick to be hit. Then they got to react. That's not easy. It's not easy. It's not an easy situation at all. That play, when it is missed, favors the returner so much. I wouldn't say it's easy because you still have to run the thing and you still have to break through the tackles. I'm not saying it's an easy play. But I grew up watching guys be able to take kickoff returns and punts. That was more exciting because you're standing, you're waiting for this football to come, and you got a bunch of guys trying to hit you, and you break free and you find a way to get through. Look at the play last night with Janarian Grant. The ball bounced. He caught it on the bounce, and phew, found us. And it was pretty bad coverage by Calgary, but to me, that play is more exciting than the field goal return for a touchdown. It's a great play, but kick returners are spending more time focused on kick returns and punt returns in practice because those are the harder plays. Those are the harder plays to master and to execute. The field goal ones, they're tough, but sometimes there's also circumstance of how the situation is done.
You're
Am I
almost saying
sad that it's going away? It is,
you're almost
but
saying it's like the empty net goal in hockey.
yeah. Am I sad that it's going? Yeah, it's sad, but I don't think it's the death of Canadian football to get rid of that one play.
I don't think so either. Um, by the way, we should mention that Janarian Grant moved into second place, and that historic moment last night. And he didn't, and then he knew about it. It was kind of weird. It was kind of weird. And pinball, for those of you that don't get to come to the locker room and watch the interviews, when we were interviewing Janarian Grant, pinball was like this behind me and between somebody else. He was like this. You wanted to hear what Janarian was going to say. I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, this is going to be so. We've got we've talked about the one game that was played. Calgary, Toronto won 33-30. Ottawa's going to be in Saskatchewan. Edmonton's going to be in Montreal. That's our big game of the weekend, I guess. And Hamilton and BC is the game that I think it's going to be compelling in a sense to see how these two teams play against each other, who are basically in transition because Hamilton doesn't have their starter. And of course, as you mentioned, BC is going to have theirs this game. So it's going to be an interesting weekend.
It's going to be a very interesting weekend. Could be some changes made on the power rankings.
Absolutely. So we go into the week with the Owls, Elks, Rough Riders, and we're switching the Argonauts to fourth, Stampeders to fifth. Then the Blue Bombers, Ticats, Lions, and Red Blacks. We'll see how the week end treats the power rankings next week. Thanks for watching, everybody. Really appreciate you watching. He's David Morassutti. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Hope to see you again next time. A lot of fun watching football right now, and I do not fear the rule changes and the stuff that's coming in the future. A lot of people say, well, that's the Canadian game. Well, the Canadian game, folks, I say this all the time, and I mean it sincerely. Canadian football is played in Canada, and that makes it Canadian. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time.